Jeff Galloway passed away yesterday, and I just wanted to come and make a little episode here talking about a few different things. And it's kind of crazy. We got to talk to him. I got to talk to him for an hour and a half or so during the month of Jeff. So we got a really fun interview. He was going to go attempt a marathon in Hawaii, and then it seems like it's been a little rocky since then, and then passed away. Olympian, he inspired millions of people to start running. And this is what I think is really cool. So there's a number of different types of inspiration and different types of pros and figures in their field. So maybe you have someone who's really fast and inspires people to get into something because of how good they are. Maybe you have someone who just is like the picture perfect form for something, like, or comes up with a new technique like the Fosbury flop or something like that. But what Jeff Galloway did is he was an Olympian who found a way to make running accessible to millions of people. And I think that is what is so powerful, coming up with the term, and I love the term, obviously. Jeffing is just such a cool way to get so many people into running. Like the run walk ability, taking the scariness of running away and making it something that someone can do almost immediately with, walk breaks in there. People set mini PRs. I believe he said he ran like a 2:17 or something marathon using the run, walk, run method. And I think that's crazy. And so I am going to replay the Jeff Galloway little interview that I did. It's like 70 minutes, but I just kind of wanted to chat about how cool it is to inspire people, what his legacy is, and just give you guys a chance to rehear maybe the words from someone who, I don't know, just did so much. So the other thing that I want to put in here is I heard this on a radio show I listened to quite a while ago. And so Jeff Galloway lived from 1945 to 2026. And what I heard on this podcast was the thing about how you get the year that you were born and the year that you die on your tombstone, but everything in your life happens in that little dash between them. In the term, the line was, fill out your dash. So make the biggest impact that you can in that dash, or live life fully, or however that resonates with you, because all you get is that dash. So I wanted to throw that in there. And before I play the interview, me and Jeff Galloway, Mr. Galloway to me, we traded some emails over the past couple months, and I wanted to read this one article, this one thing that he wrote, and he sent to me. He said he thought I would enjoy it, thought it might help me. I talked to him just a month or so after setting the record on the AT and being in the grips of the post-trail depression and having to come back after something so big. And Jeff was in something even bigger in the Olympics and coming back from that. And so I'm going to read that article. Here we go. A Philosophy of Running. Having been the new kid in class 13 times by 8th grade, my life was in chaos with gaps in my academic background, no friends, unfamiliar big city, overweight, and hated exercise. At my 14th high-level prep school, I was anchor at the bottom of the class rankings and forced to work out on a sports team every afternoon. I found refuge, good friends, and help with the mountain of homework within a few days of joining the cross-country team. I worked hard every day and slowly improved, but not enough for college scholarship offers. My best high school cross-country friend, a year older than I, had chosen Wesleyan University and convinced me to apply. The following year, a freshman named Amby joined the team who loved to run as much as I, and during our senior year, Bill Rogers joined. Amby inspired us by winning the Boston Marathon his senior year and went on to be the editor-in-chief of Runner's World magazine for decades. Bill won the Boston Marathon and New York Marathons 4 times each. I was the slacker, with only a 5th place finish at Boston. Not bad credentials for a liberal arts institution with 1,200 students where no athletic scholarships were available. It was at Wesleyan that I met Dr. Martin Luther King and asked his advice in choosing a career. His answer, which I still use as a guiding principle, was to choose a field that helps people improve the quality of their lives. During the month before I ran my first marathon, I wrote a humanities class paper on Viktor Frankl, whose logotherapy philosophy has helped me chart my training in my life. Frankl believed that human behavior and motivation is primarily driven by the search for meaning. I know that when I run, my attitude, energy level, and empowerment to take on challenges improved. So during my first 10 years of running, when I didn't win races or show potential, I pushed through the fatigue, pain, and goal frustration when other runners dropped out. Frankl believed that suffering due to setbacks, failure, etc., will only bring about despair and depression if we don't find meaning in the suffering. Frankl's ideas impressed me so much that I began finding lessons from every setback and revised my training around cognitive concepts based upon data and the experience of experienced coaches and athletes who also studied the principles of training. When researching my mental training book, I found reasons why endurance training delivers meaning to long workouts. Anthropologists studying ancient man believe that our species survived because our ancestors walked constantly to find food, probably logging close to 10,000 miles a year. Primary cause of death was starvation, and as they walked further, they tended to find more food, and more of the tribe could survive longer. Circuits of the brain were developed that rewarded those who pushed onward with feelings of accomplishment, achievement, and the desire to get out the next day and do it again. It was meaningful to do long walks because that behavior improved survival and gave meaning to the effort. Those circuits are still working today due to genetic adaptations. I feel them after every long workout. After graduation, I went into the U.S. Navy in the Vietnam combat zone. I couldn't run in that situation, and Frankl's principles got me through a very stressful period as I looked forward to being able to run regularly again. My second tour of duty, 2 years later, was on a ship under construction in Hawaii. Not only did I love the great places to run, I found a running community that was vibrant and young. I found a running community that was vibrant and fun, with various fitness backgrounds from beginner to nationally ranked runner. During that last year as a naval officer, I reconnected with the various ways that running has injected meaning in my life and made a vow until I was 100. A vow to run until I was 100. At the same time, beginners and runners with problems were coming to me for advice. I was proud to be a mentor, hearing how running had improved their health and life. I remembered the career advice Dr. King had given me, and I looked for a way that I could bring that to more people and get them into regular exercise. So I finished my naval assignment and enrolled at Florida State University to become a better teacher. At the same time, I joined a small team of college graduates who formed the Florida Track Club to continue training towards the U.S. Olympic trials, 2 years away. With inspiration from Amby and mentoring from my teammates Jack Batchelor and Frank Shorter, very well-known names, I secured a place in the 10K trials in the last qualifying race just before the Munich trials began. Running in last place for a mile, I conserved resources and passed every runner except for my Florida teammate Frank and qualified for the Olympic Games. A week later, I was able to be a pacer for the founder of my running club, Jack Batchelor. We moved from 100th place to 3rd, and I dropped back at the finish so he could join us in Munich. Running in the Olympics was my dream and gave me more meaning to the years of pushing to my limits, frustrations, and setbacks. I embraced Frankl's premise that one can find meaning in all areas of life. I made it my next mission to introduce the general public to the many benefits and levels of meaning delivered from running. To do this, I had to find a way of managing the fatigue, aches, and pains. So I opened the Pioneer running store in the US the year after Munich, and a few months later initiated free clinics, training groups, and beginning running classes. My first big breakthrough came working with the beginners. I started collecting data in my beginner class to reduce the pain and exhaustion that caused beginners and others to stop exercising. It was meaningful to me to give my students tools to manage the negatives while they enjoyed the benefits of exercise. As the years went by and I received the data from thousands and then tens of thousands of those who used the method, I kept editing strategies for based upon what was working better for most and was keeping them injury-free. With a mission to help people improve their health and mental attitude, I went to work on cognitive tools and successful metrics that could manage the fatigue and eliminate pain associated with exercise. The breakthrough principle, which was first used in 1974, was my run, walk, run method. Simply stated, you run for a very short time and then walk for usually 30 seconds from the beginning. Each walk break, when done right from the beginning, erases the buildup of fatigue and stress on weak links by nonstop running. The method is now called jeffing, which is passed from one new runner to another. Long runs are done every week and build to at least the distance of the goal race. So if you're running a marathon, you train up to the marathon distance. This avoids hitting the wall before the finish and often improves finish times by several minutes. The most common awareness of the meaning derived from the exertion comes from statements like this. I often don't have the time to exercise, but I do it because it boosts the quality of my workouts. After a morning workout, I feel that I've done something significant, and that feeling lasts all day. These comments give me a very meaningful day. So that was a piece that he wrote, and he sent it to me, and I thought I would just read that for you guys. Very proud of his method, honed in over hundreds of thousands of people, maybe millions of data points at this point, and just really cool the impact he had on, if going on a run improves your day, think of how many millions of people Jeff Galloway got into running to be able to improve their day. All right, I'm going to play the interview I had with him back in December. If you've listened to it before, there's never any pressure to listen, but, guy passed away, made a big impact on the world. Wouldn't hurt to just hear his story. I think we let go some of our elders or don't acknowledge some of the stories of the past a little too easily, especially with things like live in the present and no limits and be fearless or whatever. Like, all these things are present day things, when I think what we're doing is we're building our own story ourselves. And so the ability to get to tell it in the future or make an impact with it is in some way, I assume, all our dreams. And so here is a snippet for 70 minutes or so of Jeff Galloway's story, and maybe it will inspire you to do something in your life. All right, I'm just going to let it end when the interview's over. Thank you for listening. You can like, subscribe, and the sponsors, they're all linked below, but we're going to keep it a straightforward episode. Today on the Free Outside podcast, we have an absolute legend, probably responsible for getting more people into running than anyone else named Jeff, for sure, at least. So welcome to the show, Jeff Galloway.
Great to be here.
So I want to start with, so you ran in the 1972 Olympics. What was it like after that big goal? Was there a big low after you hit this incredible high in the Olympic Village and Munich and everything?
No doubt. It was major up in my life to make the team, because quite honestly, I was not expected to make the team. I came from last place in the 10K into second place and made my qualifying, and that's the highest I have ever been after a race. It was a wonderful series of experiences that came about, including the ability 1 week later to help a teammate of mine on the Florida Track Club make the U.S. team. I paced my buddy Jack Batchelor, who was the founder of our club and taught me a whole lot about what goes on in the world class level of racing. And I paid it back by pacing him through the marathon because he was not a good pacer. And he got into trouble repeatedly by going out too fast. So we went from 100th place at the mile and just whacked away. And at mile 21, we moved into tie for third place. And I was his lookout and his pep talk giver and got him in. And then right at the finish, I dropped back at so he could be the official qualifier. But it was just a wonderful series of experiences. And Munich was my first trip over to Europe. There were a whole lot of firsts as a result of that. But right after that, I went back to a new situation. I had signed up to teach school for a year after that. And because of my obligations, I was not able to go to hardly any races during that next year. So it really went from being fully involved in the world class lifestyle and competing against the best runners in the world to working long hours every day and not being able to go and train the way I wanted to or to be able to race very much. So it was a really rough second year. But what that year did is cause me to think and to construct what did I really want to do with the rest of my life, because I knew um, within a month that I didn't want to continue with classroom teaching.
Hmm.
I love teaching. I absolutely love to teach, and people tell me that I'm a good teacher. But uh, I decided that I wanted to open a running store and use the running store as a platform to bring people into running and fitness and help them enjoy the many benefits that I received through my time in getting into this wonderful activity that we do.
Totally. So how did because there were no specialty running stores, how did this idea to do something that you have no examples of if it will work and it must have been quite a risk, how did that come to you?
Well, it was a risk, and it was a risk that involved all of my life savings, which quite honestly was only a little over $2,000. So, in a way, it wasn't a big risk, but it was all I had, and
Hmm.
I had a mentor. Uh, my longest friendship in many ways, and really my most close friend that I had for many, many years was a fellow named Jeff Hollister. He was the number 3 employee at Nike.
Yep.
And Jeff and I met in 1966, and we stayed in touch weekly at least, if not more than that. But during those years that I was suffering through that first year of classroom teaching, Jeff tried to get me to come out and work for Nike. And it was um, very tempting for me. But as I went out and did clinics for Jeff and others on the West Coast during that period, right after I was a classroom teacher, um, I found out that Jeff was opening a Nike store in Eugene. I had actually helped him do that for the previous company that Nike was, Blue Ribbon Sports.
Hmm.
And Jeff helped me a lot in advising me what to do and what not to do. Um, and Phidippides was the name that I chose because Phidippides was the founder of our sport of long distance running. And I wanted to give him credit. So it was a great journey. We were in business for 51 years before the effects of COVID and online purchasing hit us. But it was a wonderful stretch. But in the early years, there wasn't enough business to support the store. And so I went out and did all types of clinics and areas with schools and in companies and so forth in order to help bring people into the store. I would go out to the track where I like to work out, and I would put the most visible shoes, the brightest colors and so forth, on a blanket in the middle of the infield. And when anybody would come over there and start looking at them, I would interrupt my workout and go over and tell them about the store, give them a little discount card, and so forth. And so it was out of that store then that I developed the training programs, the clinics, the in-store clinics, the coaching programs, and a lot of the other things that I have done since.
Wow. Yeah. So I just finished setting the record on the Appalachian Trail 2 months ago, and I'm in a bit of the same low after the high. So I'm also wondering, what were the phases into knowing your passion was, well, it seems like you knew the passion was running, but how to turn it into a life? Was it the come down of kind of sulking for a bit and then thinking, what can I do? And then the store came about. Do you remember the phases in 1972 after you come back from this worldly experience and are teaching and it's not the teaching you want to do?
Yeah, it was an interesting transition and sort of a shock transition
Mm-hmm.
because I had not had an opportunity during that classroom teaching year to go out and run many races. I really didn't know what shape I was in. But a surprise came to me just before the end of that school year. I was I received a voucher for a plane ticket to go out to the national championships. They gave all of those who had made the Olympic team the previous year the chance to compete for no expense, travel expense money. So I took that voucher and I definitely took advantage of that. And I figured I'm not going to really make any headway in my competitive career, but at least I can see where I am in
Mm-hmm.
terms of what my fitness level is. The Nationals were in Bakersfield, California that year. And, excuse me, and in late June, early July, it's darn hot in Bakersfield, which turns out to be a real asset to me because my life has been spent mainly in the South.
Mm-hmm.
And I know how to deal with heat. That's really what helped me get on the Olympic team. I was in last place for the first mile because everybody else went out too fast for a hot day.
Yeah.
And I picked them off one by one. Well, similar thing happened in Bakersfield. The gunfires, and it was a 6 miler. And you ask now, wasn't in the national championship at 10,000 meter? Well, not back then. It was 10,000 only in the national championship on an Olympic year. The other 3 years, it went down to 6 mile and 3 mile in the national championship. So anyway, the gunfires And I take off and get into a rhythm with the people that were in the last third of the field, and just sort of hung on to that. And quite honestly, I didn't feel good. It
Hmm.
was because I hadn't raced very much. I wasn't in racing mode. I really didn't have a lot of the form and technique that was efficient for that faster pace. And I just hung on to that third of the last third of the group. Well, after just after halfway, the pace started slowing. The heat was starting to get to most of the runners. And so I had developed a rhythm by that time,
Hmm.
first 3 miles. And when the pace slowed, I found that I could still keep up the rhythm of that and then pass people. So I still didn't feel good, but my rhythm was working and I was passing folks. So I continued to do that as I went through the second half of that race. And by the time I reached the last um, 2 laps of the race with about half a mile to go, um, I was up in the top 5 or 6 runners and having a go at it. I still didn't feel good, but I was hanging on.
Yep.
So, with a lap to go, uh, there were 2 runners there that uh, took off. And I, at first, because I wasn't feeling good, I said, well, I'm not going to go with them. I still possibly got third place. Um, but for whatever reason, I did go with them, and it really wasn't that much of a conscious decision. And as I went with them, I started feeling better and better. And I got into the last uh, curve of the race, and it was me and this a British guy going after it for first place. And I mean, we went all the way down to the finish line, and right at the finish line, a third guy came from behind in a blistering kick and um, passed me by about a fraction of an inch on the photo afterwards. So I ended up officially third in the race, but um, the leader, the British guy, did not go on the U.S. national team because he wasn't a U.S. citizen
Uh-huh.
and he wasn't registered to do that. So I got to go on an amazing world tour of competition. We went to Russia, ran against the Soviet team. We went to Africa and ran against the Africans. And we had several other races in various parts of Europe. It was fabulous time, but it was even more important for me. It was a time for soul searching,
Hmm.
talking with other runners that were in the same situation I was. They were in between jobs or, looking for a career and things like this. And at the time, you couldn't officially make your living off of running.
Hmm.
You couldn't get sponsorships. You could not have a job that was you were being paid because you were a runner. And so as a result, we had to find other jobs to get by. And I had done that. But at that point, I decided that I would make the jump into a running store. And so, my advice to you, Jeff, in terms of having gone through the lulls during that year,
Hmm.
is find another goal, something that engages you. Hopefully, you can find somebody to do it with you because having people to go with when you are doing some type of a challenge for you is always a plus. And it always will give you more memories and more chances to bounce ideas off that other person.
Totally.
So those are my first two little bits of advice from having gone through a similar situation that you have, and you'll come out of it. You'll come out of it with some great things that you want to do, and you probably don't know now what they are.
Yeah, that's the beauty of it, and that's why it's fun to talk to you and have you relive 50 years ago. And just for people listening's sake, I want to highlight that this is before, and like you said, before professionalism of athletics. Like all of you had to be amateurs, and I'm sure balance the, maybe you didn't have many expenses when you're traveling to compete, but you're also not making money to pay for things at home and stuff too. Was that an added stressor of traveling the world, trying to just make ends meet when you're not getting to make money by traveling to Russia and Africa and places like that to compete?
Well, it's a good point. It was a lifestyle for a number of elite athletes, and so um, that year that I was on the U.S. team, uh, there was no income coming in.
Mm-hmm.
And so I had saved up a little bit from my teaching, and then I was able to live off that until I opened the store. And actually, I didn't really take much salary at all the first year of the store because I needed to build up the inventory. So, what I did is take races in various places, and the one of the things that we did as athletes is we would request that we get a first class ticket, and then we'd go to the airport and cash it in on a lower cost ticket, and that would fund me for a couple of weeks at least. So there were all types of little things like this that were allowed by the authorities, but if they really clamp down on you,
Uh-huh.
but we were all in it to try to survive, and we helped one another. It was really a great time, and the friendships that you develop and things like that they stay with you for life. Really wonderful.
Totally. Yeah. And speaking of that time period, current day, and I'm sure you see it, there's so many trends or supplements or styles of training or things. Were there things people were trying back then as far as even something like baking soda and sodium bicarbonate type stuff? Were there little hacks that you guys were trying to maximize your performance back in the 70s?
Well, excuse me. The trend right then was it was right before steroid use started coming
Mhm.
in to distance and middle distance performances. Um, I would venture to say that there was very little of steroid use among the distance athletes, if any, in Munich.
Mhm.
I know that Lasse Viren, the winner of the 5K and the 10K, was accused of blood doping. That's a totally different type of situation. And it's very unlikely that he could have smuggled blood in to Germany at that time anyway. And it's doubtful whether it really even helps you that much anyway.
Mhm.
But other than that, steroids were used at the time by sprinters, field event athletes, and a few of my teammates in the middle distances had started to think about it or experiment a little with it, but it wasn't rampantly used. Now, the very next year on my U.S. national team, when we went to Soviet Union and Africa, there were a number of middle distance runners that were using steroids.
Mhm.
And this increased a little bit each year. So that was sort of the buzz and so forth. And quite honestly, it really turned me off. The thing that I
Mhm.
loved about distance running before all of that is that it was you. You had to produce the performance,
Yep.
and it was real simple. You get there, they fire the gun. He who gets there first wins, and I love that simplicity and the honesty of it.
Mhm.
Um, the honesty really does go away when you add drugs to the mix. Other than that, there were always coaches that would tout some miracle exercise or type of routine that would improve times. But quite honestly, I analyzed a lot of them,
Mhm.
and the research as to why they supposedly helped, and the research really wasn't very good on it. I go by the research.
Yeah, totally. So, before we kind of move on, I'm really curious in training for the Olympics, what was a typical week? Where, and how many workouts? How many miles were you running? What was training like 50 years ago for some of us who weren't even a thought back then?
When I decided, well, just to give you a little backstory, um, that that starts out in the present day. I'm
Yeah,
going over to Honolulu to run uh, one more marathon next week, and
incredible.
it was in Honolulu in 1970 that I made the decision I wanted to try to qualify for the 72 Olympic trials. Now, the backstory is that I graduated from college in 67, signed up in a Navy program because of the draft,
Hmm.
and I was stationed on a ship off Vietnam in the combat zone for 12 months. And after that, my second tour of duty was on a minesweeper in Pearl Harbor. Well, I lucked out. They were doing some rehabilitation construction on the ship, and it never went to sea while I was there. And it was a big relief because that ship was scheduled to go over and sweep mines out of Hanoi Harbor. I wasn't really looking forward to that,
No.
and didn't have to do it. But while I was in Hawaii, I got back into running. I wasn't able to run at all off Vietnam and got significantly out of shape. But the Hawaii time, that last year, I really brought my fitness back to where it was before I went in the Navy, and I was starting to run some pretty good times. Um, the bottom line on all of that is that um, I had 2 years when I got out, and I really had to make a decision. Do you want to go through this arduous training that you were doing before? As a matter of fact, once I signed up to join the Florida Track Club, Frank Shorter and Jack Batchelor. Jack was on the '68 Olympic team, and Frank was uh, one of the top three runners in the world for 3 years before the Munich Olympics.
Hmm.
And both of them were running 140 miles a week. So it was 10 miles in the morning, 10 miles in the afternoon. I came off my time in Hawaii running about 50 miles a week. And that was as much as I had ever run in college.
Hmm.
So when I went down there and met with them and found out what they were doing, it made perfect sense that I would increase my mileage.
Hmm.
Another reason for that is that my roommate in college was Amby Burfoot. Now, Amby and I went to Wesleyan University where there were no scholarships for athletes. We went there for the academics.
Hmm.
And, you know, the other side of that story is we weren't offered any scholarships because we weren't that good in high school.
Yeah.
But Amby stepped things up dramatically, and he was running over 100 miles a week during his last 3 years at Wesleyan. And his senior year, he won the Boston Marathon. There hasn't been a college athlete before or since, except him, who won
Uh-huh.
the Boston Marathon during college. And this is at a school that had no scholarships, a school that only had 1,200 people in it. Not only were he and I there, but Bill Rogers joined us a couple of years
Wow.
later.
Yeah.
So it was a crazy time, but we have pulled off one another ever since.
Mhm.
And the um, the thing that I came off with when I joined the uh, Florida Track Club was a work ethic, and I didn't want to come in to the trials any less conditioned than Jack and Frank were.
Mhm.
They certainly were running a lot faster than I was, particularly the first couple of years. I mean, the first year and a half. And so I would do a long run every 3 weeks. I would do a track workout once a week, occasionally twice a week.
Mhm.
I would have a fartlek day out in the woods 1 day a week, and all those would be in the afternoon. The morning workouts were 10 miles, super easy,
Okay.
one foot in front of the other. The
Mhm.
afternoon, I'd do about a 3 or so mile warm up, and then I'd do a workout. And if I had anything else I had to do for 10 miles that day, I would do it afterwards.
Uh-huh.
Uh, and so, it was pretty basic speed workouts. The innovations that I came up with that helped me most were, first of all, running longer for the marathon, running longer than 26 miles. And I got this from Kenny Moore. Uh, Kenny did that, and he was the only world class athlete I knew at the time that did that. And it really elevated his performance when he started doing that, and it elevated my marathon
Mhm.
significantly. I dropped about 10 minutes when I um, upped the length of my last long run, and they were done super super slow.
Mhm.
The other innovation that helped me in the marathon was doing 1 mile repetitions that would be done on non long run weekends. And they would build up to a maximum of 14 of them. And I would do those 30 seconds faster than my goal pace was in the marathon. And then the one track workout that I did was designed for the 10K. So
Okay.
I would run 400s, sometimes 600 meters. At the time, it was 440 and 660 because we had quarter
Yeah.
mile tracks back then.
Yep.
And I would build up to as many as 24 quarter miles. And I would only jog for about 100 yards. Um, and I got into where I was jogging fairly fast in between the quarter miles. So that was the essence of my 10K
Yeah.
training.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, it's a lot of the same workouts that persist today, and I preach to runners that I coach is these new fads and things are often fads, and a lot of the running terminology and principles are long lasting, tried and true, because 209 marathons were being run 50 plus years ago, and we're not incredibly faster now despite all the technology and supposed innovations as well.
You're absolutely right. I have seen things come and go several times during my 67 years of running and following running.
Yeah. I want to talk about the pre-movement, because you were friends with Steve Prefontaine, and
He
he
was a
made
good
a lot.
friend.
Yeah, and he made a lot of waves in getting the sport where it is today. I'd love to, yeah, talk about kind of your friendship and how he helped move it forward, and I would say build a basis of professionalizing the sport for years. I mean, to current day, I would say, right?
Absolutely, and he's not given credit enough credit for doing that. He stood up to our federation, the AAU, at a time when they threatened to disqualify him for international competition and all types of threats that they did. And he just flat looked him in the eye and stood him up and confronted him. And the quick Cliff Notes version of the story of professionalism is that it really started because Pre wanted to have some competition to prepare him for the Olympics. When he went to Munich, he had not been able to run against a lot of the runners that he had to run against in Munich, and
Mhm.
that's puts you at a great disadvantage. Um, so he did have a few races over in Europe, but he never ran against Viren. And so what he wanted to do is to bring a team of Finnish runners. And the Finns back then were near the top of the table in performances in a lot of different events. And Oregon was such a hotbed for interest in track and field.
Mhm.
With Hayward Field, they'd fill up every time they decided to have a a meet, and it was sort of like a whisper campaign. Let's put a twilight meet in tomorrow. Hey, tell so and so, tell so and so, and they'd fill up the stadium. It's really an amazing time.
Yeah.
But pre when he first came to the University of Oregon, had a chip on his shoulder. He had something to prove, and his attitude sort of attracted detractors there.
Mhm.
So there was some pushback. You're not an Oregon type of guy. You're not laid back, all this sort of stuff. Uh, and that's absolutely true. Pre was going after it. He was going to make a name for himself, and he was going to become the best runner in the world. He didn't even settle for the best runner he could be. He was going to be the best runner in the world. And I got to know him when he was a sophomore there. I came out for the Pan American trials in '71, and I was getting my race number in the middle of the infield there, and um, I've sort of corner of my eye. This guy is coming up on my right, and he punches me in the shoulder here, and it's not just a little punch here; it hurt. And he said, "Galloway, let's go for a run." And, Pre was just out front, boisterous, let's do it. And I had never run with him. I really had never met him. And I said, "Good to meet you, Pre." And so we took off and did this tour around the campus, which is a whole story in itself. And it was really interesting. But we became friends. And it was one of these things where he did not have an older brother. And uh, I I served that role to a good extent, and whenever we worked together, we had a good relationship because, for one reason, he knew he could whip my butt anytime we ran in a race. So there wasn't any gamemanship that he had to do with me.
Mhm.
But we did have a lot of great experiences together. We even were working on some projects when he died. His mentor at Nike, and it took forever for him to get a full time job there because
Mhm.
Nike nearly went out of business several times in those years. But they finally did get some good income coming by 1975, enough to hire Pre, and not many people know what position he had. Uh, so I can tell you a little bit of trivia that you can pass on somebody. He was National Director of Public Affairs. And
Okay.
so it was just a couple of weeks before he uh, he got killed in the traffic accident.
Hmm.
But we were at a meet in Berkeley, California, and he again saw me picking up my number, ran over there, and said, "Galloway, I got something for you." So he goes to his bag and picks up his business card from Nike, and he tosses it right at me, and I picked it up and I said, "They finally did it. They got you a job." And his big smile there showed he was really excited. So we started talking. That was the year of my first Tahoe running retreat.
Oh, okay.
And so I had actually driven down to Berkeley from Tahoe, and Pre wanted to come out and train after the Finns had left. So we talked about that and what type of workouts we were going to do. And then he said, "You know, with my new job, I want to talk to you about doing some promotions around the country and stuff like that." And it was a very exciting possibility. And
Hmm.
unfortunately, it never happened. But it was, he had a lot of ideas, good ideas. And of course, his reputation was second to none in the distances at that time. But more than that, he was a spokesperson for athletes being able to make their own way
Hmm.
financially. And he stood up to that AAU, and nobody else did. And when he died, within months, the uh, the folks in Congress who were fans of his started this whole movement to give athletes rights, and a bill was passed in Congress as a result of Pre's work that started this whole process for athletes to be able to support themselves through sponsorships and so forth.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, it's not the, I mean, we all would have loved to see the potential come to fruition and the results, but it is still quite a legacy to create a career for millions of people that followed and pushing that forward too by Pre as well.
Well, one more thing.
Yeah.
There was one of the most exciting things I've ever done in running is run with Pre when he warms up in Hayward Field. And I had opportunity to do that a few times, but it was amazing because I've never seen anybody before or since that got the crowd going like Pre did. We would come out of the locker room and just sort of walk onto the track, and as soon as Pre got out on the track, the whole crowd would start oohing and ahhing, and you would hear it because it was a cumulative oohing and ahhing. It was amazing. And then once we started warming up, it was the cheers started. And they
Uh-huh.
started low key first, and then they would just build into a crescendo, and Pre would play off that. He would do accelerations, and he would raise his arm, and he would do gestures and turn his head various ways. And every time the crowd would go wild. It was just very exciting.
Yeah, that must just feel so incredible to be down there next to him and just feel that energy coming at you.
It was.
So I want to get into now Jeffing or the Galloway method, and but I think first, so you start the first specialty running store. When do you kind of come to this realization that things need to be more than a business? It needs to be a community and a social aspect, and involve that teaching aspect of the running store, and have clubs and meetups and things.
Well, education was my background and my family history. My father founded a very innovative school in Atlanta. It's going bonkers. It's a strong philosophy of education called the Galloway School. And I supported him whenever I was home from school or home on leave from the Navy. And
Mhm.
I saw what he was doing, and basically um, bringing people together and allowing them the opportunity to learn at their own rate based on their ability um, is what the school is based on, along with a simple principle that a child must assume responsibility for their own education. And it's something that really works when it's applied well. And it has been applied extremely well at Galloway. But um, with that, when I started the store, I had people come in regularly who wanted to have a running group. And at the time, there weren't any organized running groups. There was the Atlanta Track Club, but they basically just would put on a few road races and an occasional track meet. But there wasn't any regular running
Mhm.
groups met, so we did it out of our store. And then um, once the runners started coming in once a week, and we moved that to 2 or 3 times a week because women wanted to have their own group, and then, the older runners wanted to have theirs. So we hosted a bunch of different groups coming in the store, but, the sum total of these people coming through saying, "You know, we'd like to learn more about whatever, whatever, whatever." And, so I said, "Yeah, let's have a clinic," and we set up this. And what really took off and made everything take off is that the Peachtree Road Race,
Mhm.
which started in 1970, and I was the first winner of that race. Um, and I came back to Atlanta in 75, bringing the store into the area where the road race was being run. And within a few days of opening the store, the race director of Peachtree, who was a close friend of mine, Tim Singleton, came in and said, "Jeff, I've got some bad news and some good news for you." Said the bad news is that he was leaving town. He had accepted a job in Texas. The good news, Jeff, is that I want you to be on the committee that runs the race. And so I certainly agreed to that. And we had a really close knit group of people that were passionate about uh, making this race the best race in the United States. And by the second year that we organized the race, it was the best road race in the world. And we brought in athletes from all over the place and brought in sponsors. And we got coverage because we had a great sponsor, Cox Enterprises,
Mhm.
the Atlanta Journal Constitution, WSB Radio, WSB TV. They did a phenomenal job in getting out our material all over the world. I wrote articles about how you train, about nutrition, about fluids and hydration, and we were doing all of that stuff. And and then the city came out. Uh, the first 3 years that we did this, we grew the race from 1,200 to 12,000. And it was
Wow.
just an amazing time, very exciting.
Yeah, that it's incredible, and it seems like this is right in the midst of the running boom too, but so was so you must have been one of the first people to almost start run clubs then in general for the most part. There were track clubs, but not really run clubs, right?
Well, there were some clubs at the time, 1973, when I opened my store. There were some clubs that were more road race oriented clubs
Hmm.
than track, but they were few and far between.
Okay. Yeah. So now I want to move into probably the part that you talk a lot about, but I think is the most valuable and has inspired so many hundreds of thousands, maybe millions of people in the run walk or the is it the walk run walk method or the run walk run method?
Well, it depends on where you're coming from, but the registration trademark is run, walk, run.
Okay, perfect. And so that came about by teaching, which it seems like is a pretty big commonality in your life, and noticing in beginners this push and sort of the huffing and puffing. But I'd love for you to tell the story of the creation of this method, because as when I the athletes I coach, the hardest thing is and the most daunting thing for a lot of people is starting running. But you sort of found this hack that made it really inclusive and a lot nicer than feeling like you can't run. You found a great method.
Well, my message from the beginning of my clinics, um, and is in all my books. Uh, the basis of it really came from my college education when I wrote a paper about a philosopher called Viktor Frankl, and it was his belief that the main determinant of human behavior is the search for meaning in life and for any activity that you're involved with, to find some
Mhm,
meaning in that. And so when I really went through a lot of his writings and so forth, it made sense to me. And I really, uh, from that point on, whenever I was involved in a new project, uh, whenever I had to organize things aboard my ship, I looked for ways of engaging people by explaining to them how they can get something of substance out of that they could take with them
mhm,
and would enhance their life. That's essentially what meaning is all about. So when it came to setting up this training program, that happened because a leader of a group of classes came into my store and said, and he got a pair of shoes, and then he said, you have a lot to say here. I'd really like for you to teach one of my classes on beginning running. So, hoping to get people in the store, I said, sure, I'll do that. And so I did. And when we had the class meet for the first time, there were 22, and we actually maintained all of them all the way through. And at the end of the 10-week class, every one of them finished either a 5K or a 10K. But the thing that really impressed me was that there were no injuries. And
mhm,
the reason why there weren't injuries is that I knew darn well two things about beginners running. First of all, that if they didn't overdo it, that they're going to get these brain circuits turning on for a better attitude, for more vitality, for personal empowerment, and a whole lot of other good things that
mhm,
they don't get in any other activity in life. And it's going to give them a lot of powerful, meaningful experiences that they can take with them. But the other thing that I knew was the negative side. And if they didn't do it right in terms of getting into running, there would be aches, pains, and exhaustion. And who wants to continue doing something when that's what you face every day? That's why
mhm,
most people drop out. So um, I really thought about it a lot. I knew that we would have to take some walk breaks. I just knew that intuitively.
mhm.
But it wasn't until we got into the first run as a group that I just did seat of the pants way to do it. And it was about huffing and puffing.
Mhm,
I knew enough about physiology and the cardio connections that the breathing rate was definitely tied to heart rate.
Hmm.
So if somebody's huffing and puffing, that means their heart rate really is going up. And pretty quickly after that, the body temperature is going to go up. And we were in the South, and we didn't want
Yeah.
that to happen. So as soon as we divided up into three groups. And I did that by having them run around a city park where we hosted our run and walks. And so after going around this park about half a mile, there were three groups that naturally fell together. And
Hmm.
so I got their names and had them become members of each group. Uh, and I had them come by the store on different days of the week so that I could run with them. And when I
Yeah.
ran with them, I was listening for huffing and puffing. As soon as anyone in the group started huffing and puffing, then everybody walked.
Uh-huh.
And so that was the initial way that we determined how much running, how much walking.
Hmm.
Um, from that point on, I did start collecting data on the pace that we were running and what pace uh, would have been realistic for a given person. And I came up with a magic mile, which
Hmm.
is a 1 mile time trial that's very, very accurate now. It has more than 100,000 data points in it. So we can really take the mile time and we can tell what a person's potential is in running a 5K, 10K, half, and full if they do the right training for that within 6 months.
Hmm.
And but the first thing we use the magic mile time for is a safe pace for long runs, because if people make mistakes in their training, it's almost always going too fast on the long ones
Hmm.
so that they hit the wall before the end of that long one and they either quit or they have to walk on in. Now, I have learned since that if you walk it on in, you'll still get the endurance of that distance.
Hmm.
But if you went too fast in the beginning, there's a much longer recovery rate for that.
Yeah.
So, anyway, the whole point then was to use that magic mile to set up a safe pace. And we do this now in all of our Galloway programs. Magic Mile sets up the pace groups. And then we have pace group leaders in each group who enforce the right run, walk, run strategy based on the pace that should be handled in that group.
Hmm.
And the amount of running, amount of walking took much longer to find because we just didn't have a lot of people using run, walk, run in the 70s and even in the 80s. But once we got into the 90s, uh, there were a larger number of people that we had in our database, and we could take the feedback that we got from these people and find out by pace per mile what run, walk, run strategies work best at that pace.
Hmm.
And it has really been very, very accurate today because we've got more than 500,000 people in our database.
Yeah, and I want to jump in too here because I think a lot of people may be listening and thinking, "Oh, this is a beginner thing." But no, this has been used for quite fast marathons, half marathons, and other distances. But also, isn't the average improvement something like 7 minutes for a half marathon and 13 or so minutes for a marathon? Like the data shows that this strategy is faster than simply running the distance, correct?
Absolutely, Jeff. You nailed it. By the way, it's an average of about 13 minutes faster when a nonstop runner finds the right run, walk, run in a marathon, and an average of around 7 minutes. Some surveys show faster, and some a little bit slower than 7 minutes, but it's around 7 minutes faster in a half marathon. Um, and all of that speed increase is due to not slowing down at the end.
Mm-hmm.
The anthropologists tell us that our ancient ancestors did not, as groups, or didn't have hardly anybody that ran long distances because the main cause of death has been starvation among our species. And they weren't about to use up the limited food resources by running when they could walk everywhere they went. And they did.
Mm-hmm.
And our ancestors walked incredible distances every year. And they endowed us genetically with the ability to keep walking forever, day and night. Keep going.
Yeah.
We are endurance animals if we walk. Now, running, not so much. However, um, there was a technique that our ancient ancestors did between 2 million and 1 million years ago. It's called persistence hunting.
Mm-hmm.
And they actually ran down game when they did this. And so today, a lot of anthropologists will go out with primitive peoples and describe how it works because it's still used. And that is, they stalk an animal that they want for dinner, and they'll jog a few steps towards it, spook the animal, takes off. Then they'll stalk it again, run a little bit, it gets to sprinting again. And over 2 to 4 hours, the animal, which doesn't have sweat glands, will overheat,
Mm-hmm. Yep.
keel over, and
Yeah.
dinner will be served. And so our ancestors, according to the anthropologists, did hunts like that. They did run, walk, run, but they really did not run long distances as a group, as a rule.
Mm-hmm. Do you know the fastest marathon that's been run with the Galloway method?
It may be mine. My PR was a 2:16, and it was in the Houston Tenneco Marathon in 1980. And
Mm-hmm.
I had been using Run, Walk, Run for 2 years before that. Uh, and I hadn't run a marathon for a couple of years.
Uh-huh.
Jumped in the Houston Tenneco, and I was used to taking walk breaks. So what I did is I walked at each water stop, which at that time was done every 2 miles.
Mm-hmm.
So from the beginning, I walked about 15, 20 seconds every 2 miles and ran a 2:16 marathon. It was a 2-minute PR.
Wow.
And my training had not been as good as it had been before in the 70s. Yeah.
Wow. Okay, two more things. First, I want to highlight a couple of the takeaways, and you can jump in here too. I think the biggest one is with the run, walk, run strategy, and you said it, but it was a little bit buried. But I want people to know is how important it is to stick to it at the beginning, and if you're going to push, that can be at the end because I think. And I've heard you on other interviews talk about this too, is people are like, why would I walk? I'm not tired at the beginning, but that's when you dig yourself the hole. And then also that the strategy has shown to be productive and useful for all levels of runners, and especially sitting as much in the ultra marathon scene. I think it's even could be even more prevalent there when you're trying to get your body to last 100 plus miles, and a similar strategy I'm sure could be adopted very very similarly in that realm too.
Oh, yeah. I have hundreds, now it's in the thousands of ultra people who tell me how well it works for them and how much faster they're running because of that. And that relates directly to what you started off with on this question, and that is you have to take the walk breaks from the beginning
Hmm.
because the walk breaks you take in the first minute or so of running will erase virtually all of the fatigue buildup so far. If you wait 6 miles to take the first one, you've got 6 miles of fatigue you'll never get rid of. And so the question you have to ask yourself, do you want to be strong in the first part of the race or the last part of the race? The benefits are much greater at the end of the race because those that run nonstop at first usually slow down a good bit at the end. And those who take the walk breaks in the beginning have that resiliency in their legs and are passing people all the way to the finish line. And there is nothing more empowering in life than passing people to the finish line.
Totally. All right, two more quick questions. My first one is, do you have a mantra, or have you used one in maybe your Olympic years, or over the last 50, 60 years of running? Is there a mantra that's worked for you to keep going, other than first off, I love the thing of like getting value out of each thing you do or assigning value to it. That's a great one. Do you have one beyond that?
I wrote a book called Mental Training, and what I discovered in the research for that is that we don't have just one brain, we have two of them. We have the ancient subconscious brain, and then superimposed over that is the human brain. Well, the ancient brain has 1,000,000 times the processing capability compared with our little human brain, but the human brain is more powerful. So if you activate the human brain when you run, you can do away with those negative hormones that are starting to accumulate due to heat, to exhaustion, to your goals not going the way they want to. All of those things trigger the release of negative hormones, which the ancient brain will do. And to turn that around, you need cognitive thoughts to activate the human brain. So mantras work. They work extremely well. And the ones that I've used most is I can do this. I'm feeling good. I'm in control here.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to whatever your goal is. You verbalize it and you say it over and over again. The more you say something, the more likely it is that you can activate in your brain the belief circuit, which has resources to try to pull out of your body what it's not doing right now. And
Mm-hmm.
mantras can really help you to do that. The most powerful cognitive tool, though, is a really simple one, and that's counting your steps. You
Yep.
start counting your steps, you're going to turn on your human brain. And when you do that, you override the ancient brain and do away with the negative hormones, at least for a while. And then you can keep doing that as you keep saying the mantras or you keep counting.
Totally. And if anyone wants to prove this to themselves, one really cool way that I've found is, next time you're in a pool, say you're going to hold your breath for 30 seconds and then hold your breath for 30 seconds. You'll feel like you're going to die at 30 seconds because that's what you told yourself how long you're going to hold it. Then if you say 40 seconds, you're going to hit 40 seconds. It's amazing how telling yourself something like this, it it's totally changes your mindset. It's very, very true. So a way you can experiment with it at home, anyone listening. Okay, last question is, what is your case for being the Jeff of the year this year?
Well, I don't really go out for, um, putting myself up to do things. I'm someone that likes to support other people to help them along their journey and so forth. Um, so, if you're looking for a coach, I'm there to help, and we have a, a an app that's free download, free run walk run timer that can help you along the way. And if you like it, then I guess that's my version into a possible reason.
And also what you've overcome this year, and running a marathon in a week as well. Would you be willing to share a little bit about that too?
Yes, my friend Amby and I, my roommate in college, and of course, Amby became the editor in chief of Runner's World magazine for several decades. He's really legendary in writing and in his editing. But um, Amby and I stay in touch, and we will toss things out to one another. What are you doing now? What are you thinking about? What are your goals? And on one of these sessions, actually a couple of years ago, he brought up this thing that uh, became one of my motivations for doing this, and it's the 8 decade challenge. And what it is he did not know. He goes through data a lot more than I do, in terms of race finish times and all this sort of stuff. And he said he hadn't been able to find anybody that had run at least one marathon in 8 decades of life. Well, he and I both ran our first marathon when we were teenagers. Not many people today who've been around a lot of decades started as teenagers, because there weren't
Mm-hmm.
very many marathons, and marathoning wasn't things that runners did very much back in those days. So in 1963, I ran my first marathon, and I've run more than one in each decade, with the exception of my 80s. I just turned 80 in July. I haven't run a marathon in over 4 years. And I didn't know, as I approached my birthday, whether
Mm-hmm.
I really wanted to go through this again, because my longest run had only been 8 miles since I had a heart attack back in 21. And it was due to Agent Orange exposure in Vietnam, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
But in any case, I got in touch with Amby and started talking, and we decided that I should go for it. He boosted me on this, and he's actually coming over to go with me in this, and I'm very excited about it. So anyway, this goal came up as a result of that, and looks like I may be the very first person to ever run a marathon in 8 decades of life, and I'm really very excited about that possibility. I have had setbacks. Recently, after a 20-mile run a month ago, it seemed to go real well. I recovered quite fast. I was running every other day afterwards. And then about 8, 9 days later, I woke up at 3 o'clock in the morning with literally pain in my butt that was just oppressive. I
Mm-hmm.
couldn't sleep. I couldn't even think. So went to urgent care, had to get rolled in on a wheelchair and that. And they couldn't find any breakage, thank goodness. And so they gave me some prednisone to lower inflammation, and it
Mm-hmm.
worked perfectly. And I was back on my way 4 days later. So that was
Wow.
okay. But about a week after that, about 3 weeks ago, I was walking down in Orlando at my son Weston's home area, and slipped on some slimy drainage, and I was going down. It was one of these things like you slip on ice or something. There
Mm-hmm.
was no warning, and my head was headed to the pavement. So I fended off, but my back leg was in the air and slammed down on the toe and jammed the toe with amazing force. Again, a lot of pain. Foot swelled up. Went to the doctor, and it appeared that I had a hairline fracture there, which it probably was. Those are hard to really
Mm-hmm.
diagnose on an X-ray, but it probably was some sort of a fracture. And I took him seriously when he says you shouldn't be moving around very much. So I was pretty much sedentary for almost 3 solid weeks. It nearly drove me crazy, but I
Wow.
did it.
Uh-huh.
And then at the 3 week mark, I woke up one morning, I stepped down, and there was no pain. And so I started rebuilding the last 2.5 weeks. And I did a 7 miler, then 11, then a 16. And last Saturday, I did over 21 miles. And I'm ready to go in Honolulu, and I'm ready to get that eighth decade.
Wow, you are an inspiration, Jeff. Thanks so much for sharing these and really rooting for this 8 decades of marathons. That's incredible.
Well, thank you. And I thank you for having this podcast. It's really a valuable thing. And thank you for celebrating Jeffdom.
Yeah, there's so many good Jeffs out there. It's hard to pick the ones that we can have on, but hopefully we can have you on next December for the month of Jeff to hear about your last year of being a Jeff.
Love to. Love to.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much.